and take it away, Steve.
Hey, hello, fellow Ore Diggers. I'm Steve James, and as you know, I'm probably a regular attendee remotely to these things because I only make it to campus a few times a year, and I really appreciate the opportunity to see what's going on from my home, like some of you do. And when I mentioned to Ruth that I was actually going to be on campus the same day. She asked me to help host the meeting, and I'm just thrilled to do that. So for the rest of you lunch bunchers, if you get an opportunity to sit next to Ruth and host it, please do so. Uh, One of the reasons that I'm doing it here is, I'm an alum, but I also went to graduate school here as well as my undergrad degree, like many of you did. And so we're really thrilled today to have Dr. Carl Frick, who is the Dean of Graduate Studies and also a professor at mechanical engineering here at Mines. And we're really looking forward to his presentation, where he's going to update us on the current program of what's going on with graduate studies, and more importantly, the exciting future and what that exciting future holds for Mines. So, and for me, I really look forward to this because having finished my master's degree 46 years ago, this is probably a big change, and looking forward to see what Dr. Frick has. So without further ado, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Dr. Peter. I said Carl Frick. I am so sorry, Dr. Oh, it is Carl. It's Carl Peter
In there.
That's what happens. And I'm sorry when it came up on the screen, all of a sudden it came up Peter and it confused me. So Carl, I apologize for messing up your name.
Steve, no, I don't know how my middle name got in there. Somebody should go edit that thing. How did it sneak in? It's even an awkward spelling, actually. There's a whole story for that, but that I will save the group from that torture. But thank you very much for that intro. I'm very excited to talk to everybody here kind of about our graduate programs and sort of what we kind of have to offer, and then of course the future of grad school. So I have a slide deck, so let me just kind of do the typical Zoom figure out how to share my screen kind of moment. So bear with me here. All right. So how's that looking for the group? Pretty good? Okay. All right. Well, love to talk about grad school, but let me just talk maybe a little bit sort of about myself, just to kind of frame who I am and what I do. So I actually did grow up in Colorado, graduated from high school in the Springs. And at the time, I remember graduating, and there was no doubt in my mind where the best engineering school was in the state. And I did not go there. I followed all my friends to CU because that's what everybody did. And I must have had fun because I stuck around there kind of a long time, ended up getting my PhD. And from there, I thought it would be fun to go adventuring. So I got a postdoc in Germany for about a year and a half. And if I'm being honest, my biggest memory there was it was the soccer World Cup during the time I was there. And I did not appreciate the way Europeans feel about soccer until I was there. And so that was a great experience. I really enjoyed it. And then from there, I had the bright idea of being a faculty member. So I applied to jobs at companies and then universities at the same time. And ironically, I got that job at a biomedical device company in less than a month. And 6 months later, I got a call from several places and ended up settling in Wyoming because I missed living in the Front Range and being close. If you don't know where the University of Wyoming is, it's in Laramie, which is just about 2 hours north of Denver, about an hour north of Fort Collins. And it was great to live there. Had my two girls when we lived there, and it was great to kind of have them grow up in a small town, but truthfully missed being in the Denver area. And when this opportunity to come to Mines sort of surfaced, I jumped on it. So I was the department head of mechanical engineering when I initially came here, and then moved into this Dean of Grad Studies just for about a year and 3 months or so now. And it's a great job. If you're not familiar with the sort of Office of Grad Studies, it's probably a good thing. I was joking around that it's Usually when I talk to students, it's because something went wrong or there was an issue. For the most part, we're in charge of making sure kind of operations run smoothly all the way from recruiting to admissions to advising to graduation. So we set a lot of the policy that then sort of departments follow. And so I have kind of a few things to sort of talk about as we kind of go through these grad programs. But I think one of the first things that kind of come up typically when I'm talking with people about graduate programs here at Mines or anywhere is that usually I'm talking with a group of people that have a bachelor's degree. Which is something because for ages 25 and older, really only about 30, I think depending on the stats you look at, like about 38% of the United States has kind of an undergraduate degree. Only about 13% have a master's degree and only 2% have sort of a PhD. So it starts to become kind of a rare air that you're in, and not everybody's sort of familiar with how graduate programs and graduate education kind of compare to that undergrad experience. And so one thing most of us are Mines alums, so I thought I had to have some graphs and some statistics in here. And so this graph kind of demonstrates our enrollment over time. So we have from 2008 to 2025. So we can both of these curves represent enrollment starting at the fall semester for each one of those years. And then the blue curve is sort of the undergraduate curve. So the way to read this is on the far left-hand side. In 2008, we had 3,392 undergraduate students. And then all the way to 2025, we have 6,142. And so the big thing you'll hear a lot, especially in sort of when the alumni come visit or even sort of the dialogue from the university, is that our undergraduate student population has grown like crazy. And we have all these new buildings on campus and all this great stuff happening. But if we did, a kind of a formal analysis on this and we did a growth curve, we would see a growth of about 3.7% annually. And believe it or not, this red curve underneath is our graduate program. So again, in 2008, we had 932 grads. In 2025, we had close to 1,900. And we've actually grown at a faster rate for our graduate programs than we have for our undergraduate programs. So even though there's only about 22 to 23% of the students are graduate students, and that ratio has remained pretty stable, we've sort of kept pace with the undergraduate student population. And so if we kind of zoom in on that red curve, so these are just the total graduate students. What we have on the curves beneath are maybe these like categories of graduate students, I call them. So the bottom curve is this sort of green one where we have thesis-based master's students. And about 216 of those are 11% of the graduate student population. We have 698 PhD students that also are required to do a thesis. So they're this light blue curve. And then this purple curve is the so-called non-thesis programs. And we'll kind of talk about what that means in a little bit, because this is something that's kind of been an emerging trend. And maybe the biggest thing you'll notice about this red curve all of a sudden when we zoomed in was my little 4.2% growth thing doesn't look very good. It doesn't match the curve very well early on. And so you'll notice we had kind of a stagnant kind of growth maybe from 2010 to 2018. And then we really have had this kind of strong linear growth since then in terms of enrollment. And so if we draw some kind of parallels, if we looked at the number of these non-thesis sort of students that we have, and then kind of our growth in graduate enrollment over the last 7 years or so, that's really been the driver, right? So a lot of these programs. And so what do I mean by that? And so kind of here we have like a little chart of the degree programs that Mines offers. So on the left-hand side is the so-called non-thesis, or another thing you hear a lot is sort of coursework type degrees. And I think that the one that maybe is brand new or that most of you haven't heard of is these ideas of certificates. So a certificate is designed to be pretty short. If you're a full-time student, it should just be 1 semester. And so it's either 3 or 4 courses. And they're really kind of classes that are set up, they're curated, and they're designed to be courses that sort of introduce you to a particular topic area. And the kind of cool thing about these certificates is they can be stackable. So if you get started and you say, okay, I want to learn more about, I'll pick on one, program that we have is for example, like finite element analysis. that's a certificate degree we have to do computer modeling of structures. So if you wanted to look at the internal forces on an airplane wing, we could teach you how to do that computer modeling. We could teach you a pretty advanced version of that in these 3 or 4 classes that you take. And then you could take those classes and you could build them towards a master's degree or PhD if you wanted to in the future. And then in addition to these certificates, we have this so-called non-thesis masters, or sometimes called masters of engineering. The masters of engineering is really just for engineering type degrees, but they're exactly the same degree. They're typically 10 classes that you take, so 30 credit hours. And they're sort of designed to kind of provide technical depth. And these degrees have been around for a very long time. So they were originally designed for PhD students that really didn't want to finish off their PhD. So it was something where they could still kind of earn that sort of coursework-based masters and have something to show for the time that they were at the university. And these are probably most popular option. It's our most conventional option, and it's something where by the time you're done, you really have this kind of strong technical knowledge and base that employers are looking for in a particular degree program. And then we also have another thing that's pretty new is this sort of professional master's degree. It kind of mirrors this non-thesis master's, so it's also just coursework. It is designed for you to kind of finish off in usually 3 semesters if you're full-time, so a year and a half or so. And the big difference here is that the coursework has changed. So now again, we're kind of picking very specific classes that are really more designed to help students sort of be more successful in kind of a professional environment. So the nature of the curriculum sometimes has a little bit more of a kind of a business or a management flavor. But one of the big things we usually do is we kind of incorporate project-based learning. So especially if you have people that are currently working and earning their degree at the same time, they can bring in some of the projects that they're working on and sort of gear it towards course credit. But it's not just designed for working professionals. It's also designed for our students that know that they want to go work for a company. They don't want to go on to grad school and become a researcher. So we're trying to position them where they're kind of desirable from an employment standpoint. So these are popular degrees that are sort of popping up at the moment. And then on the right-hand side, we have these what I would call thesis-based degrees. And really that means that at the end you write up a big document and you have to stand in front of your colleagues and in front of a panel of professors and sort of defend your thesis and defend the research that you did. And really we have 2 flavors, and these are very traditional. And so you have this master's degree, which takes usually about 2 years. If students ask me how long it's going to take, I say every bit of 2 years for the most part. And ironically, it's a little bit less course than those non-thesis masters, but of course you have to do 6 credit hours of research, and that's really what defines the degree. And then PhD is just sort of a master's on steroids. So instead of 2 years, it usually takes you about 6 years. If you go straight for your PhD, if you get your master's first, then a little bit less. Usually I say 4 years or so. And the irony, that the counterintuitive part of this is it's not a whole lot more class than a non-thesis master's degree. So that sort of on the surface is a little strange, because people say, well, why, like, how can we have this non-thesis master's take 10 classes and a PhD also take 10 classes? And the reason is because you do a lot of research. So really what you're doing there is this 24 credit hours of research at a minimum. Most degree programs are more than that. And then you have to pass a few exams on your way. So this admission to candidacy is usually 1 or 2 exams depending on the department, and you got to show your chops and then go through that whole thesis defense. And usually when you're done, you're somebody that's very, very well equipped to work in sort of the research field, either for a company or continue on in sort of academic pursuits. So these are kind of big picture our degree programs, but in terms of topic areas, Mines, I think everybody knows on this call, is a STEM institution. So it is a kind of a limited number of degree programs. So what we're doing is we're looking at this kind of pie chart, and the pie chart represents our student population. So these close to 1,900 students that we have on either on campus or online, but that are enrolled at Mines. And sort of around the pie chart, we have 16 degree granting departments, which represent about 70% of the students. So, for example, mechanical, economics and business, computer science, geology, the size of these pieces of the pie kind of represent the relative volume of of students that we have. So for example, if we look at geology, geology represents about 6% of the student population. And for the most part, each one of these programs offer kind of a non-thesis master's, a thesis master's, and a PhD. Those are real standard degree programs. But one thing you might notice is we kind of have this relatively large, awkward piece of the pie that's just sort of marked interdisciplinary. And this to me is really unique. So if we were comparing minds to, I don't want to compare to another university, because then we obviously we might have a law school and a business college and sort of other things that kind of broaden what you'd expect for a university, a different university. But if we kind of look for just kind of the STEM disciplines, this sort of interdisciplinary thing is something that's become popular in sort of recent times. But to me, what we're doing here at Minds is really impressive. So this interdisciplinary group, it's close to a third of the students are getting a degree that essentially is a combination of multiple other degrees. And we actually have more interdisciplinary programs than we do regular departments. So we have 17 of these interdisciplinary programs. I wrote them all out. They're unbelievably kind of eclectic and interesting. And I don't mean to take anything away from our traditional departments. They're amazing, but this is to me something that really distinguishes us as an institution. So some of these degree programs are things you just simply can't get anywhere, and they're designed to be programs that really kind of leverage the expertise of our individual faculty and sort of capture our identity. And I think I would have no problem speaking for the rest of the afternoon about our 16 departments and 17 interdisciplinary programs. So I thought I'd just highlight just 3 of them to kind of illustrate the breadth of what's possible. So I'll start maybe with this carbon capture, utilization and storage. And so this is a certificate program or a non-thesis master's. It's 100% online. The majority of the students that are enrolled in this program are people that work in the field. And they're classes that are taught by geology professors, they're taught by petroleum faculty, they're taught by geophysics faculty, and they're actually taught by the economics and business faculty as well. And they kind of curate and collect the classes for these certificates and for this non-thesis master's, specifically designed for people working in this exact space. So it's really cool degree program. And then maybe to contrast that, we'll maybe look at this additive manufacturing degree, or sometimes referred to as 3D printing. And so this is a degree you can get either online or in person. We offer classes in both, and they're separate. They're 100% separate. So you're either taking classes asynchronously, meaning you're watching videos and you're going through the curriculum online, or you're sitting in a classroom and you're sort of learning about this topic and going through the same curriculum, exact same rigor, exact same content, same exams, but you can have your choice of experience. And to me, what makes this program really interesting is about 80% of the classes are actually taught by people who work at companies or who had worked and have since retired, and have that practical experience. So we'll have a professor, from Lockheed that currently works there, that talks about their additive center and what they're doing with it as they're teaching the subject matter. So to me, it's a really interesting degree program. Online, in person, again, a certificate and a non-thesis master's program. And then maybe the last one I'll highlight is this advanced energy systems. This is 100% in person, so it doesn't have an online component. And the reason for that is that you'll spend your summers actually learning from researchers at NREL, so the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which is only about, I think it's 3 miles away from campus, just down the road, less than a 10-minute drive for sure. And so you'll take sort of these AES courses during the year, and then during the summer you'll go sort of take a class from them. And then for the students that are participating in research, you'll actually have a mentor from NREL. They'll advise you through your research and the project that you're working on, in addition to kind of a Minds faculty member. So I'm obviously cherry picking some of the programs I think are the best and most interesting, but they're maybe represent a really good cross section of kind of what's possible and what we're currently offering here at Minds. So if you're thinking to yourself, hey, this is kind of confusing, I don't blame you. So let me see if I can load up a page here to help people search. So is everybody looking at a web page right now? Is that working? Okay, great. So maybe I'll scroll down. This is our graduate admissions page. So if we want to know more about these programs, let's say we want to know, hey, what kind of certificate programs do we have that are online? I don't want to, I live in North Carolina and I love mines, but I can't find my way here. So this is an opportunity then to kind of look at these online programs and we can go, for example, to this carbon capture one and click on this program and sort of learn a little bit more about it. So it's got, it's got sort of a non-thesis master's and the certificate option. We have our application requirements, how you can apply, relative cost, how much is this going to cost us? And, if you want to talk to somebody, we can talk to the program director, Yulin Fan. She's so passionate about this degree. She loves it. So you can reach out to her, put in your information and learn everything you want to know. All right. Let's see if I can get back to the presentation. Here we go. All right. So maybe another thing I kind of want to frame in addition to just sort of the programs we got available is sort of who are the students that choose to be here. So being a STEM institution, only about 18% of college graduates decide to earn a degree in sort of a STEM field. And then obviously a lot fewer even choose to pursue graduate programs. So that we do have kind of a unique cross-section of students. And to frame what that means just a little bit, for example, every year there's about twice as many medical doctors graduate as PhDs in engineering. So just to kind of frame how few people decide to get their advanced degree in the STEM field. So if we kind of look at our cross-section of students, being a STEM institution, we are kind of dominant by men. Unfortunately, that's sort of indicative, I think, of most engineering colleges. And it's actually almost exactly what the undergraduate population is this 70-30 split, which is actually relatively high compared to some other engineering programs. But if we kind of look at the sort of the cross-section of race that we have here on campus, the thing that kind of stands out is this blue box that unfortunately may be a little bit hard to read, but this is about 20% international students or people essentially from a foreign country that choose to get their degree here. That's a lot different from what you'd expect in sort of a graduate or undergraduate program. So there's about 3% of people that earn their undergrad degree at Mines is international compared to 20% who earn their graduate degree. And this is in large part because they see the opportunity and the value of that degree and earning that in the United States for sort of the future. And then if we look at the cross-section of age, if we looked at age demographic for undergrad, I think it's something like well over, I think about 95% are 24 years or older. But obviously for our grad students, we start to stretch that age group a little bit more. And then if we sort of look at our degree programs on sort of left-hand side, we have this pie chart of the different degrees. And we've talked about a few of these: this certificate, this engineering master's, this professional master's. I think the big thing I wanted to highlight here is they're about 50-50. So if we take thesis-based degrees and we take non-thesis-based degrees, we kind of split halfway through, but not so much on online and residential. We're as an institution, we're a little bit new to the game for online. So that 12% grows by a few percentage points every year, but that's still kind of a relatively small fraction of our students. But one thing I kind of wanted to highlight was maybe just looking kind of beyond some of those numbers. So I chose these three individuals to kind of represent large groups of students. And I wanted to, full disclaimer, this is not, I'm not trying to say everyone falls in one of these buckets. I just wanted to pick three real people to talk about to sort of frame what sort of typical, or maybe call it prototypical or archetype individuals that we have in our programs. And I do have permission from these wonderful individuals to use them for presentations like this. So we'll start with Matthew. I would say that this is very classic. So he got his undergraduate degree at Mines. He's 23 years old when he graduated. He got his BS degree in chemical engineering, and then saw a real opportunity to get his sort of master's degree, this non-thesis master's in this engineering and technology management program, which is sort of Mines kind of version of an MBA. Although if you say that to the ETM people, they may have some nuanced disagreement, but essentially the idea here is we have a degree that is an engineering focused management degree. And if you asked Matthew, why he chose that degree, he would say that he really wanted to sort of have kind of depth in what it took to be successful as a professional with his engineering background. And it paid off great. He had a job before he graduated with Chart Industries. They actually put him in a mentorship program right away where he shadowed the CEO for almost 2 months, just kind of as a reflection of the background that he had and the interest that he had, and something that really set him apart. So he's a great example of somebody kind of pursuing that additional degree. And if you're a mines undergraduate and you pursue a mines graduate degree, then it is possible to sort of double count a couple of your graduate courses towards your undergraduate degree. And so that really makes it possible then to get that master's degree in 1 year, which is really popular. So about a third of those master's students in those numbers I was showing before, they do this so-called +1 program, or we call it the combined program, where you're able to get that master's in 1 year and have that be a jumping off point. And then in the middle here, I'll maybe transition and talk about Moses. He's got a great story. So I think in sort of high school, he watched a presentation on sort of geology and hydrology and was really drawn to it. Ended up applying to the University of Toledo for his kind of master's degree, where he really excelled and did great. And as he was thinking about where he wanted to go sort of to school for, or whether he wanted to get a job or whether he wanted to go to school for kind of an advanced degree, he kind of started looking at programs and found our interdisciplinary hydrology program, which is not unbelievably rare, but again, it kind of distinguishes the institution as not every degree program, or every university, I should say, has this degree program. So I think he was trying to decide between Stanford and Wisconsin-Madison and Mines, and really felt like our hydrology program stood out, and decided to pursue his PhD here, and is having a great time so far. And then the third person I'd point out is Liz, and Liz is great. Is extremely enthusiastic. She's a non-traditional student, so right now she's a systems engineer for Blue Origin. She's taken online classes as her primary interest, and she's taken online classes at UCLA and USC, and then went through a whole online program at the University of Washington, but ultimately was really attracted to, again, one of our interdisciplinary programs in space resources. And the irony is, if you ask her why she was attracted to mines instead of some of these other kind of programs that she experienced, she actually referred to the community. So even though we have an online program in space resources, we're sort of sophisticated enough to have in-person sessions and seminars where we have networking opportunities. So the big thing for her was that she felt like she really got to increase her kind of Rolodex, if you will, of people that she knew in the aerospace world because of her sort of degree in space resources. And she is anxious to sign on for a PhD program, but told me she needed a break from school for a year or so before she wants to come back. So these three I'd sort of characterize as kind of our sort of buckets of students. We have our kind of traditional student that's working on that non-thesis master's degree. We have our student that's interested in a career in research and development that's pursuing their PhD. And then we have working professionals that are pursuing these kind of online degree programs that we offer. And then the big thing you may ask yourself is why the heck should I do extra school? 4 years was enough. I got the undergraduate degree. I'm ready to hit the working world. And that's usually not a bad idea, actually. If you're an undergraduate student for mines and you graduated last year, you had a 92% probability of getting a job, and your average starting salary was about 81 grand. So excellent investment if we look on return of investment for the institution. This is really where mine stands out. But I would argue that sort of these graduate degrees are almost always an improvement relative to your undergraduate degree. So positive outcomes, again, they're very high, 92%, 97%. I always joke around that we can't get too much better than that, because you're always going to have 1 in 10 students that maybe want to backpack in Europe right after they graduate, or something like that. So these numbers are quite good. But maybe we'll notice the average starting salary starts to scale up with your time in graduate school, and that's actually really typical. And the spacing between the BS master's degree and PhD is typical, and it's been this sort of spacing, this 10 grand per degree, for most of the time that I've been a faculty member. And the other thing I'll point out is oftentimes people talk about sort of getting an advanced degree and sort of maybe that's only good for being a professor. But I did want to kind of illustrate just a little bit that if we kind of take our cross section of all our graduates and look at where they work, it really is a lot of different places. So our biggest sort of employer really still is aerospace, and followed by energy, oil and gas energy, civil construction, and then we start to get into this education range. And in fairness, this graph is all the graduates that we have, bachelor's, master's, and PhD. But the majority of our PhD graduates do not go on to be professors in the future. And that's because companies are really still looking for STEM graduates with advanced degrees. So very popular, very much great at job placement, and very, very happy with our career center for sort of monitoring and keeping track of these statistics. They're fabulous. We have something like 1,600 companies that run through the career center to recruit our students every year. I think we have 400 something companies that come to our career fair every year, which includes people interested in graduate students. So I think we are the largest career fair actually in the state of Colorado. So very impressive. And so the other reason that you may want to pursue grad school, and especially if you're one of the students that are working on their thesis, what that really means is you're sort of doing research. So you're maybe like this gentleman here, where you're in a lab, kind of physically working on experimentation, or sometimes you can be doing computational research as well. But doing that research and kind of filling out that thesis is something where you're working on kind of an unknown question, an unknown problem underneath the sort of guidance of a faculty member. And for Minds, we're really kind of focused on solving some of those very critical kind of challenges. And we are successful as a research institution. We're this R1 category, which is this sort of highest designation you could be as a university. I believe last year we had 100 million in total research awards that came in to help support 32 centers and industry consortia that we have on campus. And really how that kind of relates to sort of our graduate education mission is that the vast majority of our thesis-based students are kind of funded off these research awards. So as we kind of look at this, about 90% or 85% or so of the PhD students, and about 2/3 of the master's students, they're all supported on things like fellowships or assistantships, and they're really helpful. They provide the student with a stipend, and that's about $38,000 a year, and it also covers their tuition, any fees that the university has, and health insurance. And this is something that's really unique to STEM degrees. So if you talk about going to get your MBA, there are very, very few assistantships. There are very few scholarships available for you. Usually you have to pay for that. Same thing with your law degree, same thing with your medical degree. I think we've all heard stories about people becoming a doctor and having hundreds of thousands in student debt. That's typical. That's typical. But our students who are on fellowships, they are, for the most part, they're supported throughout their time getting their advanced degree. So they're actually going to school for free and being paid kind of a living expense to make it through, which is really fantastic and unique. The last thing I kind of want to talk about is the kind of a new professional sort of development program that we're rolling out that we call here the Minds Advantage, and we're really proud of it. So as we were putting this together, kind of in connection with our career center, again, they're fantastic and already doing great stuff, but they have the burden of having to deal with all the undergraduate students and the grad students. So we really wanted to create a program that was just focused on kind of unique needs of our graduate students and just helping propel them towards getting a job and being successful in their career in the future. And so we started by talking to employers. This was our big thing that we did. So we actually did a phone call, little campaign. We talked to specifically engineering managers or people that hire engineering or scientists that hire our graduates with an advanced degree in STEM. And what was really interesting to do is we talked with them on the phone and our phone or Zoom, and a big thing that we got from a feedback perspective, about 85% of the people we talked to would say technical skills are very, very strong. So as they hire kind of students with a master's degree or even PhD, or even if you talk to a NASA engineer at JPL, they'll tell you that if they hire a PhD student from Mines, they expect that person is going to be technically very savvy. But then they'll also say they don't expect that person to be sort of ready to deal with like a workplace environment. So oftentimes they'll mention kind of communication, and this came in a lot of forms. It came in sort of kind of being able to manage other employees. It came in the biggest feedback you get is being able to sort of take that technical knowledge and communicate it to a broad audience. So I even had, I'll never forget this, one of the managers that I talked to said, I just want to be able to hire somebody who could explain to my boss's boss what they did every day in a way that was understandable. And I thought that was a great kind of message, and it's something that was a big take home for me for this, that we wanted to fold into this Minds Advantage professional development program. But in addition to employer feedback, we surveyed over 100 alumni. And they pointed out some great stuff. They kind of looked back at their degree and said, man, I wish, we had a few more real world applications in some of this theory. I wish that I focused on my network. That was a huge one. So I think when you're in school, you're very focused on your assignments. And then the second you're out of school, you say to yourself, well, I wish I would have focused on getting to know people in my industry a little bit better. So I had this kind of network. And then themes that came up a lot were leadership, management, and finance. So finance being a big one, where just simply understanding what's the what's the profit model for the company I'm going to go work for, and then how does my job kind of influence that profit. And then of course we looked at what other institutions were doing. Stole is not the word I want to use, but that's probably appropriate. So I think we talked to over 20 other professional development programs at other universities, and really cherry picked what we thought was important. And what was important was our alumni. So I think the majority of people on this call, this is a really powerful thing we have. So to me, this is something, a great way for alumni to be engaged. We have 40,000 plus across 80 countries that are really in key positions at some of these places that our students would love to work at. NASA, Sandia National Lab, SpaceX. These are all amazing places that our students would love to go, and we already have kind of a great sort of engagement. So that's something we wanted to fold into this in Minds Advantage. And so look for a little bit more messaging in the future. We have a few sort of events coming up. We've had a few already this kind of year. Our goal is to really touch each student as they go through their graduate education with some of these principles that we've talked about. So understanding better communication, management skills, leadership skills, sort of business savvy, finance skills. And we're doing that sort of at multiple levels as they go through their degree program, and including these kind of workshops and our orientation. And the big one is going to be sort of this mini conference that we have coming up here in April, which we'd love to have people participate with. And so that is everything I had to talk about today. So I'd love to field any questions the group may have.
Mute my button here. I do see a couple of questions in the chat, and if these folks are okay with me reading them aloud, I will do so. The first question is from Savannah. Are there common themes from current and prospective students about why Minds in their evaluation of institutions? What are the reasons that people come to Minds? Why are they interested in Minds?
Yeah, no, we definitely get that. And actually one of the big things that we do is we will actually track applications that sort of come in. It's possible through a national database to see, if a student applies to Minds, but then applies to another institution, we can actually track, if you decide not to come here, where you go, and sort of draw some conclusions with that as well. So not only the people that come here, why they chose to be here, but people who don't come here, we can sort of track some statistics. And maybe I'll go back, if I can do it quickly, I'll kind of go back to sort of this group here in terms of sort of our graduate degrees. I think a big theme that we have for the students that kind of choose to be here is our kind of unique degree programs and sort of our position relative to the degree programs we do offer. So the institution has an excellent reputation and many things, but kind of starting with a lot of geological science, metallurgy, critical minerals, a lot of kind of engineering emphasis that we have. And so that really kind of comes through in sort of our brand. And that's a big reason why people kind of look to Minds kind of in the first place. And ironically, we know our biggest competition overwhelmingly is the University of Colorado. So if you kind of look statistically at where people choose to go instead of here, it's usually just up the road. So if we kind of pick if we pick like 10 people that decide not to come to Minds, then something like 4 of them end up going to CU. So very different environment, very different things they're known for. So I think we kind of split evenly there. Great question.
I will ask this next one from Kendra. How have extended years of athletic eligibility impacted Minds graduate program growth? That comes, I think about COVID and the athletes who stay on a 5th year, so whatever it is that has extended their stay and what they're doing. So that's a great one. I'd love to know about that too.
Yeah, you bet. So I think that every single one of our graduate degrees, and so maybe I'll kind of go back to see if I can do this. So I have all these animations, but yeah, if we kind of look at a cross section of these degree programs, a large theme of both the interdisciplinary programs and the departments is almost every single one of these programs has the so-called non-thesis or coursework-based masters. So if you're a student athlete, which we love our student athletes, they're dominant across many sports, which is fantastic. And quite often you have this sort of 5 years of eligibility, which sometimes in certain circumstances can be extended. And oftentimes our students are very bright, so they're getting through that degree program, the undergrad degree program in 4 years, and so they're looking for kind of an opportunity to continue participating with athletics. So virtually all of these degree programs are kind of available to them for that sort of +1 or combined option. So let's say statistically 1 in 3 of our undergraduate students is a mechanical engineer. So if I were a student athlete who was a mechanical engineer and I got close to graduating and really wanted to do that extra year in my sport, then I actually have my choice of sort of doing sticking around and doing that graduate degree for a calendar year with mechanical engineering, or I could pick one of these interdisciplinary options. And so that's where a lot of our students kind of gravitate towards as well. Like a good example right now is data science is one of our fastest growing interdisciplinary programs, both for our so-called residential, so the students that are physically here already, as well as students across the country. So that's becoming a very popular degree program for students to do in that 1 calendar year, and then have that kind of advanced degree while still being able to participate with athletics.
Okay, we have a couple of other questions coming in here now. First from Dan Krakowski. Has Minds been significantly affected by the federal funding changes and uncertainties that we currently see in the graduate program?
They have, and I wanted to keep this presentation positive, but I must admit there is some pretty significant headwinds. So let me see if I can get here quickly. So some of the things I kind of talked about with sort of these research awards, maybe a few things to kind of piece this together with sort of maybe headlines that you kind of read. And so there's a couple of things. I think the current administration has decreased the volume of federal funding, and they've done so primarily through federal agencies like the National Institutes of Health, the National Science Foundation, and then the Department of Energy. I think those are the 3 that are primarily affected, although others are as well. And the reason I pick on those 3 is because the university gets quite a bit of federal grant support, especially from NSF and DOE. With our proximity to sort of NREL and being close to the renewable lab here, then that NREL has been hit pretty hard, and then as a consequence, we've been hit pretty hard as well. So this 106 million in total research awards, it will not be this number for next year. So that volume is decreased. The other thing that's really important to recognize is the sort of this indirect cost or overhead cost number is also decreased. So the university, a typical overhead cost for a federal grant, if a company wins a federal grant, is usually the multiplier is 2.5. This is about 250%. And then for a national lab, they do a little bit lower. Usually that's about 100 to 150%. And so for mines, it's 50%. Our multiplier is 0.5. And the overhead is what goes towards maintenance of buildings and kind of infrastructure and keeping all the stuff going that we need for us to run the research that we're writing these proposals for. And you may have read that the federal government wants to decrease that across the board for all federal agencies to 15%. So from 50% to 15. And this is going to cause a lot of hardship for us to sort of continue on our current volume of research that we do. And unfortunately, the majority of funds that come in, the majority of that 106 million that come in goes towards supporting personnel, including these PhD and thesis-based master's students. So inevitably, that's going to kind of erode the total volume of students that we can have go through these degree programs, which is concerning, but the university is working kind of diligently to do what we can to kind of preserve the research that we're doing and preserve certainly of course the quality, but we really want to be able to kind of maybe even pivot to other areas, other kind of funding streams or opportunities for research that we can look for with some of our industry relationships. So this industry consortia, and then as well as looking for kind of things sort of just beyond and some of these kind of maybe areas of research that are not popular at the moment.
Lynn Clark has a two-part question, so I'm going to ask it separate just to make it easier for you. The first part is, how do non-thesis master's students pay for their costs?
I'm glad this question was asked as well. I also didn't really hit on this very much, but that is a little bit more of a challenge. So the one thing to keep in mind with your master's degree for your non-thesis master's degree is it something where it starts to be, if you're a combined student, it starts to be just 2 semesters or 3 semesters. So it's something that's a lot shorter than a bachelor's degree. So it's not quite the same volume of cost, but at the same time, there is not nearly as much sort of federal aid that's out there. It's a little bit more difficult to get a student loan if you're a graduate student. So when you look at the scholarships that the institution has, or that's available through the state or through the federal government, they're really focused on undergraduate education. And so that is also kind of a big challenge for these non-thesis students as they go through the program. So even if you're a combined student, for example, and you want to stick around for that extra year of getting your advanced degree, if you're on federal aid, your federal aid will not extend to that degree. So that's something where you have to kind of take a different path or a new path, and there's just much fewer options available. So I'd say that's actually probably the biggest reason that students don't get a master's degree, is because some of the funding options that were available to them as undergrads are just not nearly as available.
And the second part of Lynn's question was, where do thesis graduate students turn for the remainder of funding for their degrees?
Yeah, so I think the nature of how we offer these assistantships or these fellowships are really designed for the individual to be fully funded. So as we look at these percentages, so maybe we pick our 67% of these thesis students there, that number, that 67% are fully covered. So it's not partial coverage. It is possible to offer kind of a partial assistantship, but it's not nearly as popular. So for the most part, when you hire a student, they're usually kind of fully supported. And then for students that elect to sort of be kind of self-funded through the process, or you can go through the same process as non-thesis master's students, where you can apply for aid or apply for scholarships, then the two really wouldn't be distinguished. So earning your thesis-based master's degree or your non-thesis would be kind of the same process.
Okay, while we wait for any more questions in the chat, I have one, Carl. How does an interdisciplinary degree program become created?
It's a really good question. Right now we have sort of internally, we have a group called the Graduate Council, where every single current department is represented. And so the first thing you do is you conceptualize your interdisciplinary degree program. and then you'd say, okay, you know what Mines is missing? We're missing a geothermal engineering program. I'm making that up, but we are missing it. And I think it is kind of a hot field at the moment. So that maybe would be one area to consider. And so what you need is you need kind of a champion at the faculty level or at the sort of department head level that says, hey, I see an opportunity. We have a unique expertise. This might be a right fit. So you need that sort of energy from kind of the individual. And then from there, the grad council will help you do market research. They'll help you kind of go through the process of sort of vetting out what's conventional, what other degree programs are available out there. You can use some of our institutional analysis tools. So admissions is actually really sophisticated with being able to look up anymore what other degree programs are offered. You have to fall in sort of a categorization whenever you're approved for a degree program. So they're part of a national database, and you can look up what other schools are doing and sort of frame the opportunity that way. And then as you go through with grad council, they'll help sort of vet this degree program, and then ultimately it goes to board of trustees for approval. And then any new degree program in the state of Colorado requires higher learning commission approval as well. And so for the most part, all the interdisciplinary degree programs we have, you can usually point back to one person or a group of people that felt that this was a good opportunity. And then we really try and use sort of grad council and admissions to sort of vet that opportunity. And not everything works out. I mean, sometimes, it's a market that doesn't really fit, or it's a little bit too close to a degree program we already have. But for the most part, if you kind of conceptualize it, we can work through it and sort of get that in front of the board of trustees. And I can't think of a time. By the time it gets to the board of trustees, it's usually pretty well vetted and a pretty good idea. So that's the typical process. I would say about 3/4 of our interdisciplinary degree programs have been approved since 2017.
Okay, I see a question from Kendra. Where and how does Mines advertise our graduate programs?
That's a great question. This is one of the things where sort of being on the kind of smaller end of institutions than and very niche, like being a STEM institution, we're very targeted with kind of our marketing efforts. And so I would say we do a handful of things. We are kind of very focused on LinkedIn. And then this is where if we had a marketing person, they'd answer this question a little bit more intelligently. We do sort of like television advertisements and radio advertisements as well, but I think we do put a lot of focus on LinkedIn. And then we also do kind of the sophisticated what we call geospatial marketing. So oftentimes what we'll do is we'll target like a professional conference that we believe a lot engineers will attend. We'll physically send recruiters there to man a booth to kind of highlight some of the programs that we have. And then anybody in proximity to the conference, we can actually change your sort of the algorithm so that mine starts popping up in your kind of advertisements in your Google searches and things like that. And so that's really where we're kind of going after our niche market. Because one of the hard parts is doing a broad array of advertisements really doesn't work as well because, again, there's only so many people that are part of a STEM degree. So having sort of a broad kind of announcement is not nearly as effective as going to places where we have engineers and we have scientists already in place, and then sort of targeting those people to kind of remind them of the brand of the institution and the wonderful degree programs we have here.
Any other last questions or comments for the good of the order? This has been great.
Well, great. I appreciate the time to chat with everybody. Let me see if I can.
Thank you. Yeah,
Stop
I
sharing.
will put in a quick plug, as I always do, for next month's program. We are excited to welcome Jack Manis, who is the director of the library here on campus, as well as Renata Loeffler, who is the director of the Mines Museum of Earth Science. Two amazing and wonderful resources here on campus. They've got lots of news to share and updates and plans that are on their radar that we think everybody would be interested in learning about. So I hope you'll join us. That'll be on Thursday, of course, November 20th. So be sure to check that out on the Lunch Bunch webpage. Yeah, so boy, we're getting to the end of the calendar year here. You'll also notice an opportunity for those of you who live locally to come over and have lunch with President Johnson in December for our final Lunch Bunch of the year. So you can read about that also on the website. So thanks everybody for being here. And Carl, this is great. We're so excited that you took the time to give us some background and insight on what's happening with this program. It's great. So does anybody else have comments for the good of the order?
Goal
Wrap up?
diggers,
Yeah,
and for
thanks.
those that I don't get to see that often, maybe a few of you will be at the game on Saturday.
Yes, indeed. All right.